No one is going to jail for avoiding UK national service, says James cleverly. We're going to read into this more from The Guardian, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from The Guardian with the headline that no one is going to jail for avoiding UK national service, says James Cleverly. The Home Secretary says teenagers will not face criminal sanctions if they refuse to join the military or do voluntary work. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. So what's this all about? So Rishi Sunak has introduced some kind of, well, he's not calling it mandatory, but it's more compulsory of some kind of military public service that for 18s and under to do, for youngsters to do, basically. His idea is obviously to get them to either do at least once a month weekend working public service, any kind of public service, or a year's work basically working for the basically being duty for the military. And this this policy really is, so the idea, obviously, the idea behind this is that obviously we have a military service that's a military right now that's very much doesn't have a lot of soldiers. It has greatly significantly reduced over the past. I would say definitely, maybe even I don't know if 14 years is the right word, but maybe I don't know. I don't think it's fair to say it wasn't reduced under Labour, because under Labour, you obviously had the conflict in Iraq, so personnel kind of were very high, obviously, back then. And obviously, we've not been directly involved in any conflicts for quite a while now, so that might be a factor in what's contributed to us having less military as a service than before. But I also think another thing is the incentivizing. I've said this before about when it comes to military, and we talked about this on channels with on other issues with regards to the lack of soldiers in our military. I've said that if you want people to join the military, you've got to incentivize them to do so. And you're not going to incentivize people to stay and be part of the military by forcing them against their will into it. And that's kind of what this is. They're trying to force teenagers to go as the direction that, quite frankly, some of them will not want to go to. I was offered to go, and I had the opportunity. I was asked twice when I was youngster by my dad if I wanted to join the military, and I refused both times. Now, not to say that he put the option there to me, but he never pushed me into it. I know there are some parents out there who make their kids go to the army, but it's different for everyone, obviously. And one thing that being in the military does teach you a great deal of discipline. But there is also that fear, and I understand many people feel content about this, is that there is also that possibility that their child could end up going into a war zone. And the very possibility of the child not coming back and losing them can be detrimental. And the past wars and conflicts really does speak a volume about that. You know, you look at some of the history that America has gone through, some of the wars that they have gone through, and the suffering that veterans are coming. You look at those who served in Afghanistan and Iraq, those who lost loved ones in those conflicts. It really does hit a lot of people home, and we tend to forget about those ones who no longer have their sons or daughters now because they went into war. But is it right that we should force them to? But I guess the other question is that, well, if we're not going to force them into it, how do we improve the service? And there are lots of ways of going around this, but especially at a time of a general election, when you want to be trying to win every single vote that you possibly can, is it really a good idea to kind of snub the youth generation when they've already been snubbed enough as it is, especially with a voter ID that's more favourable to senior British citizens than younger British civilians as well? Remember, it's very difficult for youngsters to have the correct ID they need to vote. But for older people, it's a lot easier as well. So the younger generation are getting, without a doubt, will be feeling put off by the Conservative Party. That is for sure. So, no teenagers will be sent to prison for avoiding the Conservatives' proposed mandatory national service, James Cleverly has insisted. The UK's Home Secretary said young people will face no criminal sanctions if they refuse to join the military or do voluntary work under the Tories' plan. In the first major policy announcement of his election campaign, Rishi Sunak pledged to introduce a form of mandatory national service whereby 18-year-olds would either join the military for 12 months or do voluntary work at weekends. The Prime Minister said the policy would help unite in an increasingly uncertainty world and give young people a shared sense of purpose. The announcement was met with ridicule and drew questions about what sanctions there would be for teenagers who refuse. There would be no criminal sanctions there and no one is going to jail over this, Cleverly told Sky News Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips. This is about dealing with what we know to be the case, which is social fragmentation. Too many young people live in a bubble within their own communities. If they don't mix with different religions, they don't mix with different viewpoints. Labour dismissed the proposals as unserious and another unfunded commitment. Now, you're not going to, like many teenagers, some go to colleges and universities. That's mixing with different bubbles and whatnot. Mixing with certain, depending on your kind of work as well. Working in certain sectors and whatnot, you're working with different cultures and regions and whatnot as well. So that's also playing a part into it as well. So I don't accept this premise that this is going to do that. This is about forcing them into something that some of them may not want to do. Now, obviously, I have to say it's not that they're going to be doing it for the rest of their lives, but it is something they're trying to push onto them. And it'll also push people off from doing volunteering work in the future as well. That's the other thing as well, which is not ideal. The Tories said it would be paid for by cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion. This is the party that has given so much taxpayer money and wasted it. And they're talking about cracking down on tax avoidance. When they say tax avoidance, right, they're not talking about the rich and the wealthy, all right? They're talking about those who are on the benefits and disabilities who may have or payments or would be off by a penny or two. That's the kind of people they'll be cracking down on. And then obviously adding interest to those as well. Not the rich and the wealthy. External figures assessed that they'll be able to catch £6 billion, £1 billion of which would be set aside for this, Cleverly told BBC's Laura Queensberg on Sunday. Tory estimates said introducing the policy would cost £2.5 billion a year by the end of the decade. Only £1.5 billion would come from extending the UK's Shared Prosperity Fund, which was designed to regenerate underfunded towns around the UK. Nigel Farage, the honorary president of Reform UK's proposal for this mandatory national service was a joke and designed to appeal to his party voters. You follow what the focus group says. You say, by doing this, I can attack the reform vote. That's what this is all about. And look, it's totally impractical. The army has shrunk from 100,000 to 75,000 in 14 years of conservatism, Farage told Sky. The Conservatives said under the plans, young people who opt to do volunteer work over military service could help local fire, NHS or police service, for example, as special constables or charities tackling loneliness and supporting the elderly people. It should be a choice. They should be forced to do voluntary service. It should be a choice for them. This is a non-starter thing. It's not appealing to the public at all. Teachers who choose to sign up for a placement in the force would learn to take part in logistics, cybersecurity, procurement, or civil response operations, the party said. This is forcing them against their will. I've had reservations about all of this before. Two police sources said they were unaware of any consultation by the government before the plans were announced. Like this is kind of just throwing whatever's sticking to the wall at this point from the government. It definitely feels like that, doesn't it, when you think about it? Unusually, special consultants, the volunteer part-time forces that support regular policing, requires training. For the Metropolitan Police, that involves either a part-time option of 23 days across 13 weekends or as full-time course lasting 4.5 weeks. Some are trained and allowed to carry tasers, electric stun gun. Sunak is trying to make global security a dividing line in the general election. On Saturday, he said voters would be left at risk if Labour win. 14 years of conservatism kind of makes that very hard to buy people, unfortunately. Labour pointed out that David Cameron introduced a similar scheme without a military component, the National Citizen Service, where he was Prime Minister. This is not a plan, it's a review which could cost billions and is only needed because the Tories hollowed out the armed forces to their smallest size since Napoleon, a Labour spokesperson said. Britain has had enough of the Conservatives who are bankrupt of ideas and have no plans to end 14 years of chaos. It's time to turn the page and rebuild Britain with Labour. It does feel like a dead horse, this story, guys. It feels to me like they've just thrown this out there in a desperation to try and narrow the gaps. They're just like, let's just throw this to, like, this is just like throwing this idea out there. It's literally come out of nowhere. This is the thing. It's literally come out of nowhere. There's no real thought process to this, in my opinion. Someone made a great comparison of saying, like, at least, are planning to introduce 16 to 17-year-olds the options to vote, to be able to vote. And this is something that Labour have been talking about for a while, and they brought it up as a counterback to this policy as well, because they're appealing to the younger voters to say, hey, we're going to give 16, 17-year-olds a chance to vote, and they want to make you guys forced to do public service against your will. And in the long term, this will put people off doing voluntary work later in life as well, because if people are forced to do it when they're younger, where's the incentive for those same people to do it when they're older later on, being in their life, being forced against their who were doing it forced against their will, and then being asked later on in life, to do it as a voluntary thing? They would have different feelings about it as the older generation has about voluntary service now. But that's just my preference. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of this idea, this policy? Is it really something they're just sticking to the wall and hoping it will go? Or is there actually something to this? Is there actually something that should be looked into? Is this something that people could get behind? What do you guys honestly think? Let me know your thoughts and more in the comment section down below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Or join me on Rumble, Facebook or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope to catch you all very, very soon.